A new Pokemon leak regarding Pokemon Home has just surfaced, and let me tell you, it's not good news. Let's take a look. Yo, whoa, what is going on YouTube? It's your boy Dan, aka Drive. I'm bringing you guys a brand new video today. We're gonna be taking a look at kind of the recent Pokemon Home leak updates, which may detail kind of some forecasting of when Pokemon Home is actually gonna come out, and some information that's pretty crucial to kind of the functionality of Pokemon Home and how it's gonna relate to Pokemon Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, and of course, Pokemon Legends Arceus. Be sure to hit that like button down below if you guys enjoy this video, and subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. And if you haven't done so yet, be sure to check out TeamShiny.com. I just launched a brand new limited edition t-shirt. There's less than 100 of them left, so head over to TeamShiny.com and check out some of our other sweet designs, like our new Gen 9 starters. You guys can use code Arceus to get 15% off your order if you pick up 3 t-shirts or more. But otherwise, like I said, we've got to talk about all this stuff going down with these leaks for Pokemon Home, so let's dive in. So the first thing here is obviously these are leaks or rumors. I think we need to take these with a grain of salt. This information is not confirmed, and even the source says, hey, things could change, this stuff is in development. However, I do think it's important to note that we're going to be looking at Centro leaks, which has gotten a bit of a kind of a bad rap in the community for the fact that they often parrot other leakers. I think in this case, it doesn't make a difference, but they have actually leaked information in the past. We have this PokeJungle article from 2020 where Centro actually leaked a handful of moves that were ultimately not available in Sword and Shield, but were added for the Isle of Armor, and those are the moves like Expanding Force and Burning Jealousy, Grassy Glide, and so on and so forth. I believe there might have been one other instance where Centro actually leaked sprites of Pokemon prior to their release through Pokemon Home or Pokemon Bank, so there is a little bit of a track record here or a precedent. So last night, Centro Leaks comes online and they post this. We have received some exclusive information about the upcoming Pokemon Home update. There's still no release date. Now, mind you, we haven't had Pokemon Home for Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, or Legends Arceus, one of which was released late last year in November, the other being late January. So, you know, we're here 5-6 months removed from the release dates of these games, and we still don't have Pokemon Home support and really no signs of that. And I'm gonna talk a little bit about in this video why that may be the case. So we also see they say there's no release date. Game Freak and Ilka, which is the studio making Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, have made good progress, but the update is simply not ready. The Pokeballs from Hisui will be recognized natively and shown in Home. So if you were to catch your Pokemon in a Jet Ball or a Heavy Ball or whatever it may be, that will apparently be displayed in Pokemon Home. However, when transferring a Pokemon from Legends Arceus to any other game, all of its moves are deleted and replaced with the standard moveset at that level for the destination game. Now you might be like, what? It makes sense, and it's frustrating, but it makes sense. Legends Arceus changed a lot of things in terms of how moves were distributed, how attacks were distributed. They tweaked a lot of the different attacks to kind of compensate for the fact that they added the agile and the strong style moves. So when you factor that in, it's not surprising to see that they're gonna actually apparently wipe movesets. Goodbye Calm Mind Umbreon, or any of that really. They're gonna wipe those movesets and ultimately force you into having the default moveset once that Pokemon is transferred into Pokemon Home. They even say that this is going to be the same case when a Pokemon is transferred from Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. Its moveset in that game would essentially be wiped, and then they would kind of create the new moveset based on whatever its regular level up pool is. They say Pokemon Go Pokemon can be moved to Sword and Shield, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, and Pokemon Legends Arceus, which I find to be interesting, that you'll be able to transfer Pokemon Go Pokemon to these different games, but maybe it's because there's less data for them to transfer there. They then go on to say that so far there doesn't seem to be any other limits regarding trading between Legends Arceus, BDSP, and Sword and Shield, only that the Pokemon has to exist in the target game, which is pretty interesting. If they were to allow those Pokemon to be transferred throughout these different games, I could see how that now makes sense. You can now transfer apparently BDSP to Sword and Shield to BDSP, or whatever it is, as long as they're housed in those games, but their movesets are gonna get wiped ultimately, and you're not gonna be able to kind of keep those movesets. So we'll see how that compatibility works. A lot of the times we've seen in the past, Pokemon allows you to transfer Pokemon out of a game into Home and then not back in, or not a Pokemon from outside that game back in. They really, I feel like Pokemon Home has been a little bit of a failure up to this point, if I'm not, if I'm being totally honest, especially with the delays here. Then they go on to say this, and this is some big stuff. Disclaimer, the update is still in development, this could change. However, as of the current build, if a Pokemon is alpha or not is not displayed in Pokemon Home at all. Weight and height should be reverted to normal when transferring to older games. So this is huge because they're saying that if you have an alpha Pokemon, let's say you grinded for that alpha shiny Mothim or whatever it is, right? Alpha shiny Lucario, whatever it may be. If you transfer it into Pokemon Home, it's not gonna display its alpha status, which means that it's probably not gonna be an alpha in other games. And it's most likely that its height and weight is gonna be defaulted back to the maximum value for that Pokemon, whereas alpha Pokemon have a different value that indicates their size in terms of how they're presented in the game. So I think that that's obviously like a really, really big thing. Losing potential alpha Pokemon in Home is kind of a bummer. And you know, what's funny about this is there's a precedent for this, right? It's not like this is that outside of the box. Totem Pokemon, for example, when transferred in to Pokemon Home, if you remember, Totem Pokemon were available in Ultra Sun and Moon as kind of larger size variants, very similar to what alphas are. They are no longer Totem Pokemon when they kind of transfer in from Ultra Sun and Moon into what ends up being Pokemon Home. They do not have that. However, there's a few instances that are good. Some things like Gigantamax Factor is preserved in Pokemon Home. A little bit different, you know, because it has to do with an actual game mechanic as opposed to just a size variable. But certain things like Ash Greninja Factor, Totem Factors, as I said, are not capable, and we'll have to wait and see. This post here talks a little bit about the fact that totems don't need to be preserved in Home because you can't transfer back to Sun and Moon, Ultra Sun and Moon. So we'll have to wait and see what that compatibility looks like. Can you transfer in and then transfer back out? What happens if I send my Alpha Shiny Lucario to Home and then transfer back to Legends Arceus? Is it still Alpha? I don't know. That's something that we'll have to wait and kind of see, but this could be a very unfortunate thing for Pokemon Home if they don't allow you to kind of keep that alpha sizing. But then again, who even knows if alphas are going to be in the next games? I think it would be nice to have it denoted in Pokemon Home, though. That's just my thoughts there. Then we're going to talk a little bit about kind of why Pokemon Home has run into these issues, right? It seems as though it's, like I said, it's taken months and months and months for us to get to this point where Pokemon Home's even potentially coming out soon. We have no idea, right? They haven't given us any information in terms of a release date. And a lot of the theory behind that is because there was such a rampant amount of hacking that took place when Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl came out. The team that develops both BDSP and Pokemon Home is Ilka. They're the same studio, and perhaps that they ran into a ton of issues trying to fix the issues with BDSP before they were able to fix the issues with Home, because you obviously don't want a bunch of like cloned Pokemon running around everywhere. But it goes a step further, right? That's kind of the theory. Sires, who is a very well-known data miner in the community, has actually come out with this post, and this is some crazy stuff, saying that BDSP is a Unity game. It's built on this engine called Unity. The normal Pokemon games, including Home, are C++ using a custom engine. BDSP is a Unity game, and saves are literally a C hashtag object. I don't know how to say that. Object serialized to disk without specifying offsets, which can change between versions. I don't know what any of this stuff means, but ultimately they're saying adding support means parsing Pokemon from the update, parsing Pokemon from and updating the save, but it's a C hashtag structure using not specified serialization with multiple versions. Again, I don't know what this stuff means because I'm not a programmer, but ultimately the idea behind it is it's not impossible for them to create a system that allows the Unity Pokemon BDSP to transfer into Pokemon Home, but it's a lot of extra work, and it's crazy to think that this was never forecasted. This was never seen as an option. This was never, I mean, we're making a lot of predictions here, but I trust that this is accurate, right? The idea that Ilka developed this game in Unity, and they developed Pokemon Home, but they're in different programming languages, and as a result, it's challenging to get the two to talk to each other, essentially, is what I'm gathering from this. So that may be a reason for this massive delay with Pokemon Home. Who even knows when it's coming out? To me, the biggest takeaway here is the alpha thing. Hopefully, it ends up being incorrect, and the alphas will transfer with some sort of insignia that they are alpha in Pokemon Home. I think that would be really nice. Otherwise, the move thing, I totally understand. So if that's the case, it makes sense. Although I really would have loved to use Calm Mind Umbreon. Calm Mind is one of the moves Eevee can get in Legends Arceus. But we'll have to wait and see. That's your leak update for today. Be sure to like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Pick up some sweet Team Shiny merch if you haven't done so yet at teamshiny.com. And I hope you guys have yourselves a great weekend. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.